For joining us on this July 14th, 2026 for a Digital World Town Hall and General Council meeting. We actually join these every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So if you want to join, there's a link on the digitalworld.earth site. You're welcome to join. We basically review the progress of the prior week and then any kind of Q&A that anyone may have, and whether it's topics that are related or just in general. And we're really looking for feedback or guidance or even criticism to make sure that we're going down the right road as development happens, as technology advances. And then also, if there's any kind of topics that need to come up for review or feedback or vote, make sure that we're actually accomplishing that as well. So thank you for those that are listening after time. Thank you for those that are here online live from around the world. And we appreciate just anyone's attendance. We also recognize that it's not just us physically in our own parts of the world that are digitally connecting, but there's a spiritual element of this. And there's a massive recognition of that is imperative, I believe, as this creation process is well underway. But at the same time, all of us are here in this same structure, so to speak, whether we see it or not. So sometimes most of the time we try and have a prayer as we begin. Is there anyone wants to kick us off there? If not, we can just understand that we are here creating and recognizing through gratitude that we're actually spiritual beings before we're physical beings, and grateful for the opportunity to build in this digital environment. Anybody? If not, we can move on.
Okay. I'm happy to offer prayer, and actually that sounded like a really good prayer.
No. How about you close us up, and we'll just keep cranking then. How's that sound?
Amen.
Okay. So we're grateful for those co-hosts that are with us. We will actually be moving off of the normal centrally hosted secure environments to a decentralized environment that's actually integrated within the digital world. We'll show you a little bit about that. As a reminder, this is a private membership association, and some of the things we'll talk about may be forward-looking. The basis of what this is here for is their secret combinations that are out there in the world, and they focus on centralized systems and centralized control. And the reality is decentralization is something that technology can actually enable humanity to become free, and not just in this dispensation or generation, but in future generations. The digital world is built on different layers that stack on one another and continue to build for future generations. So it's not something that, from an engineering standpoint, it's very scalable. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the specs and the details around the engineering of that. For those that may need a reminder, when we talk about decentralization, it's about cryptographic keys that are intelligently deployed. And so the individual can always be in control of their own identity and their own data and their own life. And they do that through a life app that is basically built within the digital world, but within different jurisdictions from the physical earth around the world. So it may be a province, a state, a country, a kingdom, or something different, a community, etc. But these life apps usually have some type of jurisdictional difference or currency difference or something that justifies building it. They'll actually be based on open technologies so that anyone can build from them. And the identity systems will be duplicate with other systems as centralized systems basically started understanding the importance of decentralized environments and recognizing them, and the individuals need that third party. Most people don't understand about that particular part of it, but in time they will. So these keys basically use derived keys to create cryptographic derived keys on top of one another. They can also be rotated. They can also be restored. And those are two things that are unique to the digital world. The rotation will actually be a standard within the actual protocol itself, which is based upon carry and some other elements, which we'll talk a lot about as we're right in the middle of that. The goal is for the digital world and the physical world to be able to come together through a decentralized approach where there is no central secret combinations. That's really the goal. It's done with that identity and derived keys and payments within the 2026 year. We're all focused on really a justification around people knowing that they can own themselves, their own data, their own life, their own artificial or digital intelligence, and their own payments. And we'll talk a lot about how that actually works. The digital world has a second version of the engineering specification. I'll drop in a URL here, but we're basically in the final thralls of what that is and how it works. And it's a very simplistic approach, but at the same time, very lasting. And we really are looking at this, at least as much as we can, from not just a year or decade, but not even a century, but a millennium, to be able to bring a system where identity can be owned by the individual, and these centralized secret combinations and systems just don't have to be what can control it. There were two of our visitors on this call that asked for, this was probably 2 months ago, but they asked for a roadmap and a system that could actually see what is actually going on. And we call this the flow. So any of the developers or anybody that wants to basically get involved, they can kind of see what is on the docket, is what we call it. So it's an idea, maybe it's a backlog, maybe it's getting ready, or maybe it's in the development process or review or testing. But the net is this actually ties into a roadmap that can publicly be viewed. And then we can also layer in artificial intelligence to actually help with development and humans that are basically just approving that process. So this is actually not just a board to see what is currently being developed, but it's also a board so that we can manage what happens within the artificial intelligence side of things and how things are moving along. We'll talk a little bit about that, but imagine artificial intelligence and projects that actually link to one another, that can actually be shared and drive tasks and accountability and testing, and then regression testing and how it actually gets deployed. And that's why some of these systems can actually, many people would say, we just can't believe that you are involved in something where it's competing with not just big tech, but hundreds of different mainstream amazing companies, and rolling all of that into the individual owning their own identity, their own data, their own payments. And so this is actually a system that I believe can actually enable that. For those that weren't here last week, we actually launched the social platform, the Clear Community and digital community, which we had launched 7+ years ago and shut down about 4 years ago. And this is actually the version 2, which is completely decentralized. I'll go ahead and just jump into it real fast. So this is actually a simplistic view of what it will look like. So you'll basically have a feed. So it can plug into other systems. So this actually can plug into systems. Imagine Facebook, LinkedIn, X/Twitter, all in one system, but a standard that can go across multiple different environments. The individual can actually get, so if you look at this particular account, let's see if I can just jump into this real fast. So if you look at this account, you can see that this is actually a type of a key. It's actually the first 4 letters or digits and last 4 digits of a public key, of a derived key for an identity. This is an identity for social within a particular identity. This is actually where it's hosted, and this is the data set that it's hosted off of. So this is actually the address for the social profile for a derived identity for this individual. And then you can basically do things. So for instance, those that have seen every week for the last literally, here, I'll pull it up real quick. For the last, let's see if that maybe, yeah, there we go. So this goes from 2009 all the way up until 2026, every week of meetings or advancements or activities. So literally, this is all the people that are involved, and you can literally say, hey, I just want to go all the way back to, when it started. There's a lot here. I'm actually going to not jump through that right now, but actually it just did. But so you can see, a lot of people just don't believe what we've done, but this is 16, 17 years worth of weekly posts, and you can see them on the social platform. For instance, this is an amazing man who built the first business registry in the world and then rolled it out to many other countries. He was here. The first one was actually New Zealand. He was actually here in Utah this last week. We're doing some crazy stuff in the automotive industry, doing some crazy stuff in the agricultural side of things, and just spending time. So yeah, for those that may not have been aware, Utah has been on fire in a couple different parts of it. Some of it man-made, some of it not, but the different topics. But the point is this is a social platform that I'm going through posts, and these are built off of keys and decentralized storage and decentralized identity. So you can also plug into other environments as you wish. So one of the things we had some pretty massive adoption within the version 1 of Clear Community. So as we launched version 1, we didn't have integration points into other ecosystems. The other ecosystems you can actually tie into 35 million different users and then public accounts, kind of like what you'll see here. And it's like, hey, I like Al Jazeera. I'll actually go ahead and look at them. I'll follow them. And you automatically can get your news within this environment without all of the noise that you're used to with other social platforms. Imagine being able to pull in your likeness, your friends, your photos, your albums, your social graph, all from other platforms into your own platform that you basically manage and control the data of. Not only that, but you also can control the integration of the communications. Communications, go ahead.
Is that part of it live, where we can pull in from other platforms?
Not yet. No, it was live in the first version for those of you that did it. But yeah, right now it's currently in that development phase. But this system is live. You can use it. You can get followers. Yeah, you totally can. What's that?
It's amazing. I just signed in. I put my birth date in, and I love the look of it.
Yeah, it's just clean and simple, and it follows a lot of the roots of Twitter, but it will be the future standard, if you ask me. So this is going to be a social standard, but how this plugs into other systems is actually where this is going to get very valuable. So for instance, this is the actual development environment, but if we click on community, look at if you can actually pull in feeds or exploration or groups or voting or council, or even many other things. I won't talk about these things just yet, but you can kind of see how the community integration, as well as the chats that we just talked about within the other system, will all be integrated. So for those of you that were on the prior call, and some of us, this is actually a replacement for Zoom, for many of the different communication platforms, but where AI can actually link into these conversations as well. So this particular one, there's many meeting rooms. You can have hundreds of people in them. You can share screens, you can communicate, you can pop on video, you can do, just tons of different things within a particular type of environment, etc. So, yeah. So there's a lot of advancements when we just talk about the social sides of things and the flow sides of things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the things that we're actually building with these technologies as we start adopting not just AI, but this new flow process. So one of the first ones will actually be, are you ready for this? Around genealogy, which is actually, many folks may not know this, but that's the basis for why this whole project really started many, many years ago. It was called the Universal Genealogical Standard, also known as UGS. And we spent years building up the spec for it. This was way before AI. And some of the largest different genealogical organizations in the world said these billions of records are yours if you can actually accomplish this. And so now this may sound really weird, but the number one use for the internet is actually, drum roll, does anybody know what it is? Pornography. Do you know what the second use of the internet is? It's actually people finding people, or genealogy. Who are we? Where do we come from? How do we connect? How do we share? How do we track? And the goal is the tracking should not be done by centralized systems. I don't even believe it should be done by genealogical systems. The individuals should own their own data, their own records, their own identity, their own credit. All of it should be owned by the individual. And then if they want to connect with someone else, they can. So for instance, when we're talking about, and this is one of the biggest differences, actually, I want to get out of that. I'm going to come up here. Sorry. When we look at this, one of the biggest differences within this system, it's actually the amount of people that you can connect with. Did you know that within Facebook, you can only connect with 5,000 people? And if you go over that, they just won't allow you to connect with more. I believe it's a scaling reality on how it was actually architected and engineered. That's why some of the other platforms, namely Instagram and others, were gaining massive more adoption because they had more views, because not only was it the algorithm, but it was around the architecture. In this architecture, you can have unlimited followers, unlimited connections. So for instance, I've got 4 followers. I don't know who they are. I can also follow people, and I can follow unlimited amounts of them. So this is a very big different reality that's going to be over time. This is going to be massively different. And when you layer that on, not just the social sides of things, but payments or finance or property. What do we got here? Never seen that before. That's cool. I'm going to grab a screenshot of this. Let's see what this is. There was an update that was done. I'll actually play a video of it. It's actually around payments. Let's see here. Yeah, it's around payments and this recurring side of it. So this is actually something that is new. If someone wants to make payments that are, consecutive, let's say it's once a month for 10 months, you can basically pop in who you want to pay it to, what the amount is. And that also ties to something that advanced when people may not have seen it, but with agreements. So you can actually think about smart contracts in the crypto world, but take it to a whole nother level. So you can literally say, I want to actually create an agreement. Maybe it's my own agreement. Maybe it's an agreement that has a certain type of a transaction to it. Let's call it a rental. Let's say we want to actually start it on a certain day, end it on a certain day. Let's say maybe it has no end. Maybe I want to have a force of law jurisdiction. Maybe the notice is a certain period of time. You can see here there's 2 parties. I'm logged in, so you can see that there's one party that's already there. Super simple. You basically say, hey, this is the address, Skyway. And let's say we're going to pay $1,500 a month, and the deposit is first and last. And boom, it basically just built the agreement. You can modify the agreement, and this, and this, and this, and then you can literally come down and sign it. It's just that simple. You can send it to somebody. You can copy a link. Like here, I'll go ahead and just copy a link. I'll drop it into here. And let's see whoever wants to grab that and sign it first. So it'll actually drop in the signature here. It's a simple thing that'll actually look like this. So this is my identity. It's actually looking at it. So I can go ahead and grab a Life app, grab the scan part of it. Actually, I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll see. I actually am on a test environment. I test too much. So it asks for a fingerprint. Yeah, same thing. So basically, you can kind of see the scan. Did somebody grab that URL and scanning it?
Yeah, I did, and it says that you have to sign it first.
Oh, I need, okay, there's a sequence to it. Let's see. Yeah, so I guess I do. But basically, let's see here. Well, it asked for all my wallets. I may be in the wrong. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but basically you have party A that signs it, party B that signs it, and then you can send it out through text or email or invites. But this is crazy because it's actually a completely decentralized agreement system that then can be adjudicated within the digital world. That's one thing I didn't show you, is where you can actually pick the jurisdiction and pick the judgment side of it later on. So you can actually have digital intelligence based upon the laws and governance and legislation of the digital world actually do a transaction prior to hitting a colonial based type system, kind of like how the mediation or arbitration systems of the world work. So we just went through agreements. I won't go into health today. There's just not enough time. Business, if you're not familiar with what that is, we've been creating businesses for 5-6 years. Property, that's going to be a future conversation, as well as two other things. One that's called stay and one that's called travel. As a matter of fact, I'll touch on some of the travel today. So the big stuff we went through is life and how it relates to genealogy. And I'm going to show you some screenshots of that in a second. The timeline, the maps, the DNA, all of this stuff is up right now, by the way. And then identity, which ties to reputation. How are you actually doing? So my profile's still relatively new. Even though I've got a lot, like, look at that. I've actually been involved in 519 different businesses and 390. This is the first time I've seen that. That's crazy. So notice how it's actually sees that I have a lot of them. So it's actually giving a poor rating. So the goal is to actually get involved with things that actually have real results and meaning. It's not just creating something and letting it sit there, so to speak. But this goes through so much. Think about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, how they'll allow the underwriting process within what's called Fair and Isaacs, which TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, basically in the United States. And then there's multiple other parties around the world. But this is actually, you can pull in all those different, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, and you can actually pull in your credit scores to help substantiate your digital identity and reputation, which you own, you control, you manage. It's not some other ecosystem. That's how all these things started. I mean, if you understand where FICO came from, this guy named Fair and Isaac created a company. That's it. Fair is his last name. Isaac is his last name. And they created a company. That's FICO. I mean, this all is just created. And this is going to be the future of those types of systems, if you ask me. There's a whole other conversation there. But I'm going to jump back over here, and I'm going to keep going through some of the things that may not be there. So in the family side of it, you can invite folks to be a part of the family. You can connect. You can also submit private DNA. Now, we actually made an offer. I don't remember how long ago it was, Wally. Maybe you can refresh my memory. 5 or 6 years. Ancestry DNA was one of the companies that was collecting DNA, kind of like 23andMe. And we made an offer to purchase their business and their data. Why? Because we were planning on setting it free. BlackRock ended up buying it from them. I didn't understand how and why, because my old executive assistant is actually the executive assistant of Ancestry DNA. And I thought that we had a real chance at actually buying this. And make a long story short, BlackRock was also a big shareholder, which I didn't understand at the time, but who aren't they? I won't talk negative, but anyways, so this GEDCOM file is a genealogical file and a standard within the genealogy system. So you can import family trees from other systems. You can pull in DNA sequences, or what we call swabbing. So there's actually an ability to take sequences or tests and then do different things. It may not just be related to who you're related to. It's maybe, for instance, in my tests, I came up with tomatoes and oranges were actually, I had a sensitive system to those things. Otherwise, I had no allergies. It wasn't even an allergy, but you can actually see through these different PCR tests who they are. And this was way before the PCR testing came out with COVID. You use the same analyzers to be able to do this. And this operation was in Hong Kong. Many of you are just thinking, this guy's crazy. He's talking about PCR tests way before COVID. And like literally, these things were very real. As a matter of fact, they shut down that same lab in Hong Kong to do some of the PCR testing for COVID and process it. And those folks were actually educated just 30 minutes away from where I'm sitting. But because of the law and because of the ability for data ownership was all centralized, none of these types of systems could actually be realized. That's one of the reasons why the digital world is what it is, and it's massively important. Anyways, this is a dashboard for family history around DNA, their genealogy, and then how the maps tie to it. This is a view around how ancestors and trees link together. Some are hierarchical, some are vertical, some are in circles. The fan chart is my favorite. It's not actually represented here. And then this talks about basically how DNA can actually sequence and link folks together. So hey, there may be a family relationship here or not. But imagine being able to find one another, for instance, and I won't use names, but my old assistant that I was talking about, she actually worked at Ancestry and did one of these sequences, and come to find out she had lots of brothers and sisters that she didn't know about. And this is one of the ways to be able to link those different elements together. And, there's a lot more to it. This is another system that's actually parallel and independent, and most of you use systems like it. Most of you are already using either Apple Photos or Google Photos. But the way that those things are being actually, the heuristics behind them, the way they're being tracked and monitored, and in some ways they'll say, no, we just basically look at a tag of them or a heuristic key of them. But the reality is you don't own that data. You're giving your photos, every picture you take, every screenshot you take, you're giving your photos to a centralized system that you actually don't own or control. As hard as that may sound, you don't own your Google Photos. You don't own your Apple Photos. Can you export them? Yes. And this is actually a new system that you can export them into. You can upload from your computer, or you can pull in from Apple, or you can pull in from Google. And imagine if you can do the same thing, but with your own technology that's linked to your own digital intelligence. And imagine if that's actually protected in the future, which will be a whole nother conversation. But think about everywhere that you go, every photo that you take, every person that's in them, but you own the data and you can tie it to your life, who you are. In New Zealand or Aotearoa, they would call it your whakapapa, your essence of the being that you are, what you're created from generations over time. This is really important work, and to intelligently design this and implement it for humanity is really, really important. This is the mobile view. So you can kind of see instead of using a web interface, this is the mobile view within the Life app. So same types of things, different connections. These matches is going to be a whole nother conversation. The social platform. This is actually going to be something that is fun. And we originally started talking about it with some wonderful people, and I hope to be able to loop them in the future. But Robert and Brandy and just some amazing folks, this is actually on the docket. It's currently in active development, and it's not just around travel, which we'll talk about, and it's not just around where you stay, which we'll talk about, but it's about being together and being one as a people. And if you haven't looked at some of the ratios around how relationships are actually degrading as technology continues to advance, I'll give you some case in point. Marriages falling through, the rate of it is falling off. Divorces falling off. Birth rates falling off even more rapid. the ability, depression, and clinical realities around just being generally happy. They're all being impacted. And the way that we connect in this generation is usually a digital type of connection. But I'm moving from communication and social and genealogy into, or family, into the ability for people just to connect with other people. Some of it may look similar to what you would see with Tinder, where you're connecting up based upon maybe skills or traits or attractions, those types of things. But think about it at a level where you're actually going and you have purpose to what you're doing. So maybe it's, I actually want to go and get a meal together or tacos together. This, and so I won't keep going there, but this is actually in current spec development and being developed. One of the other things that's being developed, and this is actually live, there's two components of it. One is Clear Taxi, which is a network of taxi drivers that are very similar to Uber and Lyft. And then in particular regions, you may have other types of public transit. In the state of Utah, which is another one of the business or units, is Utah Taxi, which you've got High Valley Transit, and you've got the Utah Transportation Authorities. I personally actually lived on that UTA when I was a young kid growing up here. But make a long story short, if someone actually wants to plug in, they grab their Life app, they click on travel. Now, you can't do this right now, but this is in development, and you'll start seeing the direction. So we're going to ask for feedback if there's warning signs or concerns, but you click on this travel app and it automatically says, hey, where do you want to go? And whether it's I'm going to show you the web app and I'm going to show you the mobile app, but you can say, I want to go to this location, and it can pop up different choices. So it'll actually pop up, let's say you want to use Uber. Well, it's this price and it's this time frame. Or Lyft, it's this price and it's this time frame. Or UTA, well, you can walk here and do this and it's this price, and then you can click on the schedule and see how to get there. Or, those are the types of realities. And then once you actually select a ride, it'll actually give you different choices. You can see how it's going, just like you would with an Uber or a Lyft. But your identity and payments and the transaction is all private to you. Your history's there. It's not like it didn't happen, but the data is yours. It's not in some centralized system. If we're working with organizations like Lyft and Uber, the transaction happened and in their system, but the goal is to treat this as a private membership association where an individual owns their own identity and data as these things are actually materializing. So this is the mobile view. You can kind of see the trips. You have different vehicles. And instead of a magenta for Lyft or a black car, as they put it, we're actually going to have a white car and white interior and white glove type treatment for the top end. Some of them do the opposite with some of the black cars. But this is actually going to be a little bit different approach, but a lot of advancements. So we talked a lot about social, communications, family. Now we're talking about actual transportation or travel, and massive, massive advancements. I won't go into the details here, but for those of you that know us physically and kind of seen it over the years, we're doing a lot of testing. There's a lot of things that also need to be able to have laws that align with them in a certain way, and we're working with those. As a matter of fact, there's people that joined this call. He sent me a message earlier today and said he wouldn't be able to join, but we'll talk about this in the future. I was planning on him being on and going through it, but that's it for the transportation around Utah Taxi and Clear Taxi as it relates to working with Lyft and Uber. There's some other things that we'll go through. This is actually some of the web interfaces for them, because you have to develop both for web and for mobile for it. By the way, there's events. Let's see. In November, I want to give everyone enough of a heads up. In November, let's see here. Yeah, this one right here. So you want to mark your calendars. Actually, there's two events in August. One is in Alaska and one is in New Zealand. The one in New Zealand is purely around Aotearoa in New Zealand and identity, and Andy Higgs is running that. And then we have a normal summit up in Alaska as well in August. So if you're interested in joining that, just message me and we can go through. I can send you out a link to the details. But that's basically already all kind of gone through, so to speak. November is what you should mark your calendars. November 2026. This is the third week. 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, and 20th are going to be a state-endorsed digital identity. And we will basically be working that whole week through showing some of these systems that we're actually talking to you about. So that is November 2026. Here in Utah, the goal is to have 20 other states that actually come in and see these systems in action and helping them to recognize that there needs to be a third party that the individual can actually generically or independently stand up their own identity and data that's separate from the governing entity, in this case, the states. Yeah, so a lot going on there. What are other important things? This is already built and we've shown it to you.
I had a couple of questions, Michael, if I could backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, feel free.
So with the data and pulling in your pictures, is there a cap on the amount of data you can store? And where is it being stored at for people who might not be as familiar with the...
So the goal has always been within the digital world to have sharded, decentralized data storage. There's going to be a price for that type of storage, which runs off of systems similar to this, where you would have a device that's storage based, but you've also got server, firewall, router, intrusion detection, content filtering at the network layer and server layer. But then you've also got the ability to actually link in storage that then you can use this storage and share this storage. So let's say this is 5 terabytes and this is 5 terabytes. I can actually use 5 terabytes in this environment, and I'm also sharing 5 terabytes. So basically what happens is, imagine if thousands of these are online, you basically have your data sharded and stored in multiple locations that then you're the only one that actually owns the encryption key. To your question around the storage side, or how much is, it's really unlimited amounts of storage. The more you use, the more it does cost though. So there actually will be an element of cost. And as people, basically pay for it, it pays for it with a thing called native. And native can be purchased from any kind of currency, whether it's fiat based or other digital assets. That's also something that we should probably touch on, but basically it's unlimited storage. The goal is to get storage to a point where it is unlimited. And this is going to sound really weird, but imagine if you could buy unlimited storage for 100 years or 1,000 years. That's really the goal, is where people don't have to worry about compute capabilities, because the people actually stand it up. The individuals, the organizations, in a decentralized approach, not with centralized data centers. This is not just go and use up a bunch of power and a bunch of water and build a bunch of businesses and buildings. No, it's the opposite of that. It is decentralized identity and data and storage, all of it that the world owns. And what happens when someone says, hey, I've got this online and I've got 5 terabytes of space, and it dies, this whole thing goes away. Well, their data is actually sharded. Think about it kind of like how RAID systems work. You have 3 disks, a minimum of 3. They call it RAID 0 or 3 or 0, 1, 3, or 5. And what they would do is they would basically take your data and put it on multiple other disks. So if one disk failed, you would still have your data. Now, if you had multiple disk failure at the same time, you would possibly have data loss. So the goal is to take that same type of RAID principle, and instead of doing it with disks and spindles, you do it with multiple locations. And then I believe in our lifetime, the way that we store things is not going to be off disks that are spindle based, but I believe that storage will actually go past what we're currently using into an element that will tie with some of the stuff we're working with Clear on, which I won't get into the specifics. But I believe that data will actually be able to be held in perpetuity. Now, you're talking to somebody that helped, I shouldn't say helped, but was involved with indirectly through the Canopy Venture Partners, which was built from Ray Norda's work. Amazing man, just absolute amazing man. And even in the open source realm and in the software realm, I mean, this guy, he was one of the originals with Novell, which created IPX, and then Microsoft launched TCP/IP and then some of the protocols. But the point that I'm bringing up is these standards can actually be something that goes global, that isn't just around how data is currently centrally done. One of the businesses that they popped out paid for a project out of a university here that then built the software that is actually tracking and surveilling all centralized systems, all communications, every search, it's literally doing something that is very wrong for society. It tracks everything, and then it literally meta tags it and stores it here in Utah at the NSA facility. And all of that stuff came out of similar concepts that we're talking about, but this is the absolute counterbalance to that. So instead of having everything centralized, we must roll it out in a decentralized approach so that humanity can actually become free. Like these central profiling systems, I don't care if it's a car, I don't care if it's a home, I don't care if it's a flock camera on the side of the road or a cell phone. These things are literally quietly, and we're willingly giving away our identity and our data. But if we can follow what the state of Utah has done with state-endorsed digital identity, where an individual can create their own identity and states and governments will endorse them as an individual, not as subservient to their centralized system where, oh, you got a birth certificate, oh, you got a driver's license. No, I really believe what Utah is doing is standing up and setting a precedence for the rest of the world to be able to free their citizens or their nationals or their people. We're all people. We're all one family, and we've got to come together with a solution that can free humanity. And I believe that this will have, is this the answer to everything? No. But could it be the start? Absolutely. Can it be something that people can say, yeah. So, yeah, sorry. Anyways, I'll stop blabbing there, but go ahead.
When I go to store that information and it's sharded, so I have a node and I can then can I choose where else that information can be stored? Like if I'm in Hawaii, so if I have family on the mainland, can I share that information with them and it be sharded with them also, who they have a node also? Or is it going to be, I mean, I have tons of data. We all have tons of data out there. And I think the difference between holding it yourself, sharing it with people who you trust, know, care about, and then the difference between that and then having entities like Apple, Google, Meta, and Amazon holding that data, which, you know, they get attacked constantly. I mean, sharding, I think, is the answer for getting your information out of those large corporate hands. But how much safer is that when you're sharding it and sharing it with other nodes or other people who are holding that information?
Yeah, so you can select where your data goes, whether it's photos or memories or communication or social platforms. And that is really the value of the architecture of what this system is all about. Like when we go and look at this particular, I'm going to try and find one. So this is patents. These are the layers here and all the different technology behind them. These are SDKs and APIs that are just being deployed. Maybe I closed the window. But the specification for what this is all about is really, and this is staging, so this might work.
I think when it comes to decentralization, it's really who's actually holding the data. And when I think of holding the data, I want to hold my data, but at the same time, I also want to be able to share that data. But in doing that, is that safe?
Yeah, that's the value of this whole system is your data can actually be your data. You can actually store your data within your own network or within a broader network of all of humanity. And the encryption keys that are tied to that data are tied to your identity. That's the value. That's why these layers exist. This storage layer, this personal vault, this file storage, sharded backup, all of this, it's actually built on all of these other elements that actually have the structure of it. So governance, network, nodes, resolution, which is going to be a whole nother conversation, identity, all of that is tied underneath this storage layer. And then you've got communication and social, the stuff that we've kind of just walked through on top of all of that, as well as different services that can be layered on this environment. Some of the services are like what I've been talking to you about, travel or about staying or about together. There's a bunch of other services that are coming. I won't go through what they are today, but the goal is you operate as you are within the physical world today, but you use a different digital world architecture for tomorrow where you own your own identity and your own data. Does that make sense?
It does. I like, for example, prefer Google because I felt Google was more secure than Apple. I realized early on that Apple stored your data and that getting that data was incredibly hard because there was no external SD card that I could save it to. So once that data, and I understood this, back in the day, once that data is held in that server, how do you get that information out of the server? How do you get it to where you own it? And I know a lot of people with Apple ID and Apple accounts who have a real problem. They keep running out of storage space because they've used it for so long and there's so much data. And the way that you would have to download that information, migrate it over, or get it onto something separate and unsync so you could actually clear it out of Apple is just mind-blowingly complicated for a lot of people.
Yep.
Is there a way that this simplifies it?
So we are in July 2026, specifically July 14th, 2026. And just 13 days ago, this Digital Choice Act, which was enacted in 2024, went full-blown law in 2025, and now it's in effect in 2026. Basically means that through a click of a button, which is another conversation, an individual can say, I want my data back. I verify that this is my account and this is the format I want the data in, and this is when I want it, and this is where I want it. And if it's not provided, this Digital Choice Act supports the individual to collect up to $2,000 through a process. It's not as smooth as what I would have hoped, but basically $2,000 per account per occurrence, whether that's yearly or not is still to be determined. But imagine if you could go to Apple, or you could go to Google, or you could go to Facebook, or you could go to your bank or wherever and say, I want my data in this format at this location, please. They have to comply to give you your data. So one of the concerns that you had was, I actually think you're very wise, but the reality is Apple does an amazing job marketing that they're all about privacy, whereas their technology is absolutely not. As a matter of fact, they have algorithms, and even before the algorithms, before AI went in and actually could look at photos, they have raw access to the actual photos. So there's I don't know if you remember the day when they said, hey, if you got pedophilia photos or child porn or whatever, we're going to flag it and alert it and so on. They literally can go in and do that. Now, I don't want to support any of that kind of stuff, and that's not what this is about. But Apple did a really good job marketing privacy where their systems were not using that type of technology. Google, on the other hand, actually uses data sharding. That's one of the reasons that Gmail is so fast. Your data is actually coming back from a data sharded environment where your internet connection is the weakest point. That may sound crazy, but it's actually a beautiful way that it works. When we look at some of these systems, particularly around memories or photos, which are usually the biggest thing, you can literally go through a process as simple as this is and start backing up your photos. So imagine if you can log in and actually grab your photos, whether you're uploading them from an actual system, or this is the complex step. Look at this with an Apple. You literally have to follow all these steps to get all of your data out of Apple. It is a nightmare. You're right. You're spot on. And if you have iPhotos, or what they call photos now, on your Apple device, it's a 2 or 3 more steps. So they actually put it in these libraries that you then have to, the photos are not actually accessible from there. So you have to export them. But the point is once you can actually get your data, you can own it, and you can own it from a scalable standpoint where storage becomes like oxygen. But the real reality is the systems that are currently being used aren't just taking your photos. They're taking your text messages, your contacts, your calendar, your email. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to layer it right on top of artificial intelligence. And you know who's going to win the artificial intelligence game, if you ask me? I don't know if you saw this, but Apple created a lawsuit against OpenAI today. Okay? Maybe it was a couple days ago. I saw it. Today is the first time. That was for launching a device. You'll see some interesting stuff that comes from that. But I believe that Apple will actually license the artificial intelligence from Google. And I believe that Apple and Google will actually align forces and get into bed when it comes to sharing artificial intelligence. And ultimately, I see Google as one of the major winners within the future around the centralized systems. Why? Because they already have your data. When we look at what happened with Anthropic in their latest version 5 and why it was shut down, and why they're taking a responsible approach to not just let access to things go willy-nilly, just the whole web and whole files. You can actually link Anthropic directly to your Google data or your Google Drive or your Google Docs. And it can go through and read all of that history. What if you could actually have a replacement for Apple and a replacement for Google? And that's what we're building, not with the digital world, but with some of the service providers of the digital world. The Clear companies are really one of the first deployments or examples of this type of ability to use decentralized storage, identity, and payments to be able to build systems and services that are the opposite of what these systems are. So what if I told you that and some of you saw this years ago, where we have mail and calendar and contacts and messages and docs and sheets and slides, all of them that are centrally competitive. So they're not Google, it's not Apple. It's in a decentralized approach where you actually own your own data, and you can take your own intelligence and layer it on top of it. You can link your own places, your own people, your own faces. I don't want to let a lot of this stuff fly, but I think you can understand what the potential of what we're talking about could actually become as far as a reality in the short term. So other thoughts or comments or questions?
Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for all your commentary. Just going back to the documents that you said for like service agreements, are they live? Like, can I use them live?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, okay, that would be really good because I'm looking
Use
at
them in a
changing my-
use them in a beta type format, but you can use them. Yeah.
Okay, because I'm looking at changing the way that I do my service agreements. And that would be the better way to go about doing it through engineering. And the other thing I wanted to say is what I'm seeing is we probably need to look at doing some chain of responsibility legislation to bring it together a little bit more. So maybe I'll work on that and send it over to you.
That's a great idea. Absolutely.
Yeah.
As a reminder, there was a digital world content policy that was that was draft legislation. I'll drop this link in if you want to review it again or provide feedback, anybody. There's also another one which we're questioning and we're not 100% sure on it. It's a new idea, but there's a proposal for a program within the digital world for a formation of a holdings entity that's an actual business. Right now, the digital world is not even incorporated. It's owned by no one. It actually creates corporations, but they're all private. But in this environment, the thought is the digital world actually contracts with the centralized systems to enable the individual that's decentralized to wrap around it, and then has basically a proposal for a operating company to actually put together the payment structure for it. We're doing some things with Clear Payments, but Clear Payments doesn't issue bank accounts. It's not a money transmitter. It partners up with things that may transfer or move money, but directly it's not. But the goal is possibly to have organizations or entities or regions that can actually, within the digital world, get their own bank accounts that are real world bank accounts and can actually get their own credit cards that are real world credit cards that tie to these systems. So it's not necessarily a clear bank, which is another conversation, but this is legislation that we're questioning there as well. So I'll go ahead and drop this inside of here as well. Actually, so this one here still needs to have some depth to it and some reviews before it gets out. It's 38 pages, but I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that this is a potential. What other things should we go through? There is a new website. This is currently a staging website. I'll go ahead and link to this. This is a draft. This is generation 3 of the Digital World website. This goes through some of the documentation. There was actually a specification that I really wanted to show you, but I can't even find it in my own navigation system. Well, that's probably a task in and of itself. It's just the docs navigation, cleaning that up. If you could, that would be great. Patents and trademarks. This is something that you're going to see a lot of movement on within the next 60 days, maybe 90 days. We just put together a term sheet that was crazy huge. Yeah. So if you want to join a Digital World Forum and Clear Summit, this is actually the one that was in January. We have another one that's next month. It's about a month away. Again, ping me if you're interested. We basically have an adventure where we go around the world, so to speak, different places, and we get to know each other. We get to go on adventures, these little kind of scavenger hunts, and then we have these rewards. And we did it. We started a long time ago. There's a vision around this and a hope around it. You know, we had presentations prior. We won't have anything like these on this next one, but yeah. So we're grateful for those that are here. Is there any questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, I have a question, Michael.
Okay.
How do I follow you in the social.clear.community? How do I find you? How do I?
Here, I'll go ahead and if you search this, so it dynamically creates my first name and then a last name, and I'll go ahead and just drop this into here. So if you just search that, you'll find it. And yeah, so literally this is less than a week old. I personally have not driven any kind of awareness or adoption, but I look forward to increasing. Actually, just in our meeting today, I've went from 4 followers to 6. And yeah, so let's start using this system. Let's start adopting the system. This is still beta, but I believe that this is worth your time. It's not going to move the data architectures. They're locked. Anyone can actually light up another environment and actually, I don't know what that's happening there. They can light up these other environments, and we're going to show folks how they can actually take a recipe and build their own systems. Now, I'll let a little cat out of the bag, but one of the reasons that this development with these flows is the way that it is with this new system here is we believe that you could actually have digital intelligence stand up these systems at scale against the centralized systems. So I know that may not make a lot of sense to folks, but as we build out these systems and use APIs and SDKs that are standards, and you teach AI about it, you can basically build it so that AI can actually start building a lot. And this is an example of a public kind of a roadmap. Danielle and Victoria, you guys asked for this, and this is basically it. So this is what's currently being, under development in this environment. So we need the digital world on this content policy. I reviewed that just a couple minutes ago. But there's other things that you'll start seeing. Does this make sense? Thoughts, comments, feedback? Any
No
observations?
feedback. I find it really hard to search and connect with people in the Clear Life app and under chats and people and places. Is there a way we can make that more user friendly?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the goals is to have this meeting run off that same technology, but after we're able to actually run it ourselves here. So continue to show up every week, and we'll make a run at this, and we'll continue to refine it. In my opinion, the underscoring architecture is built right, but the way that the adoption and user experience that you just talked about is not as simple as it needs to be. So that's one of the tasks that Wally will take from this. We'll have a gentleman named Tyler that will join us that will basically walk through that initial onboarding and usability. So, and it will be into this type of a system where you've got, different places and spaces and people and how you connect with them. For instance, these folks here, for instance, this is you, I can send you a message, etc. But this
I
is,
just tried looking up your ID with what you had put in the chat, and it didn't
you
come
won't
up with
find
anything.
you won't find it there. The issue with that is I run purely off of a Clear architecture, and this technology only works on Apple and Android today. So if you want to find me within this environment, this is actually an alias, and you'll see within, I wish I could find the specs. It's sad I can't even find our own, but there's personas that you can create. And we'll go through that. We'll actually go through that in the next meeting. So we'll go through the personas and the different environments as it relates to that. But these are the places, these are the people, this is the communication. And imagine this being embedded into systems just like this is really where it's going. So once these last integration points get done, I think it'll be pretty smooth sailing. And we'll take away that as the top priority for today's meeting. And Wally and I will work on that with others and then report back. Okay.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments or observations? Anything you want us to focus on that you're not seeing, or anything you want us to stop focusing on that doesn't make sense?
Yes, the bank.
Stop focusing on the bank, or
No,
start?
No,
Okay.
Don't get it. No, because I think we're all here for the same the same reasons. We want out of the centralized systems. We want out, Michael.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not rocket science anymore. We just, and it's getting, it's getting, I feel like they're closing in on us quickly.
Yeah. Well, the goal is to be able to work with them and help them to show a better system. For instance, the existing system on multiple levels is just a joke. I'll give you an example. We issue credit cards, and the credit cards have to be replaced every 3 to 5 years or so because they're not secure. You're giving a public key and a private key away with the credit card when you're making a purchase. Doesn't matter if it's online or in person. You literally are giving your public and private key away. It makes no sense. The other side of it is the reporting sides of it. You're basically getting an account in someone else's system. And if you lose that account, all your records go with it. And then you have to actually, there's a reason why they have this Jubilee law, well, the Jubilee history, and then these new laws of 7 years and the retention. And what I'm driving at is you basically have to do reports and to do filings. Imagine if the reports and the filings can all be done for you, but you can be private. That's where we see the system as a very mature system for future generations. And one of the reasons why the banks will stop being afraid of it and start embracing it. And there's a lot that has to happen between now and then, but this proposal, a 38-page document, is a real big key doc that takes some of the stuff that we've done with ClearPay and Clear Payments and really just different partners that are out there in the world to a whole nother level. But it's still infant. There's a lot that has to be had and realized. There's a lot of problems with it, and there's a lot of regulations that actually have to be changed and adopted. So we're waiting for the Clarity Act to be approved one way or the other, just so that we know the guidelines and the rails. On one hand, we run pretty quick. On the other hand, we're technology laggards. So I mean, we're not on the cutting edge of things. I tend to have history that if you're on the cutting edge of technology, sometimes you bleed, and it's unwise to adopt it so quickly. And so that's one of the reasons why you'll see there's open standards and open source, but we know that timing is a very big part of how technology can be implemented, not just for our generation, but for future generations. And I believe we've just walked through one of the biggest doors, which is, I don't call it artificial intelligence or AI, it's digital intelligence, because it's going to be owned by the individual as one of the paths in the future, whereas today it may not be. But we're way over time. Anybody have any closing remarks or prayers or anything that they want to issue or say as we convene and wrap up today? If not, that's okay. We'll see you next week, but I'll go ahead and give another brief moment.
I would like to close in prayer unless somebody else would.
Sean, feel free. Or
all right, thank you. Thank you, God, for all the help you're giving Michael and his team, and for all the long chain of successes you've given everybody here as we're looking over memory lane a bit. And please help Tyler to come next week and have us all have a grand old time, along with a couple of those cruises in Alaska. So, and please do with those. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Sean. I look forward to meeting you someday. I love your spirit. We'll talk to you soon. Much love, everybody. Bye-bye. Victoria, next time.